Softball teams not in just D3, but in the state, and you can still see bare spots from where they installed drainage 4 years ago. These bare spots aren't just an eyesore, but they're lower than the rest of the ground and could very easily cause injury if someone steps in it the wrong way. This brings me to the JV soccer field and practice soccer field. These fields have the goalie creases and high wear spots that have been worn down and are recessed 6 inches or so. The JV soccer field still has bare spots from drainage that was installed 4 years ago as well. And we actually had a player during practice last year who went to make a cut and ended up on uneven footing and dislocated his kneecap and required major surgery. A 16-year-old kid needed major knee surgery, was out of sports for the year, was on crutches in a wheelchair for an extended period of time, and needed to go through physical therapy. The number one goal for coaches is to make sure their players are safe, and that's the main reason I'm here today, is to try and get these issues resolved and make sure the kids are safe. Things like top dress on the field to even out wear spots, overseeing to fill in bare areas, change up the fields, the setup of the fields, to shift them 1 yard this way, 1 yard that way, to make sure high wear areas aren't the same year to year. We're a few weeks out from our summer soccer starting. It might be too late to grow grass now and may need sod in these areas. These are things I've brought to athletics and facilities last year, and with the soccer season right around the corner, I'd like to make sure we have a plan in place for these things. PMHS is lucky to have a great setup for fields where we don't have the same field in use for multiple seasons. For example, this spring season, our soccer fields aren't in use by the school, and a little bit of work would have them be ready to go. But we have an outside company renting these fields almost every day of the week. So the fields just continue to get torn up rather than have the spring to recover. I'm assuming we're charging a field rental fee for this, if someone can please confirm that at some point. So we should have money for these repairs to make sure the fields are repaired. I'd like the school board to discuss what type of facilities do we want to give our student athletes. If you go to other D3 schools and look at their fields, I'd say we're not in the top half when it comes to quality of fields. And I'd like just to know why, and let's get a plan in place to give the student athletes the best experience possible. I encourage board members, just take 5 minutes. Even after the meeting tonight, take 5 minutes, just quickly walk these fields, just see kind of what I'm talking about and see kind of what shape they're in. Thank you for your attention. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else for public input? No. All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda review.
Motion to accept the agenda. Oh, sorry. Okay.
I was just going to say, at the last meeting, I asked for a review of how we do field trips, but I didn't see that on.
No, but I'm prepared to talk about it.
What?
I'm prepared to talk about
Okay, thanks.
What do you want that under?
I'll talk about it in my report.
On your reports?
So if we could add that to the agenda, that'd be great.
We'll put it under field trips.
I know it's kind of last minute, but could we discuss the fields somehow? I don't know if we have answers or suggestions, but add it somewhere in there.
But I think it's something we can bring up buildings and grounds and go
Yeah,
over.
we can put it on next.
Mr. Callahan just left Buildings and Grounds meeting.
Yeah. And there's some things that are coming from some soccer that actually feel I'm trying to work on, but we can also bring up for buildings and grounds.
Okay.
We're meeting again August 1st, so.
Anything else to be added to the agenda? What did I see?
Now you can make a motion, sorry.
So I make a motion to accept the, or did we
Nope, they
accept
already
the
made a
minutes?
motion, so that was, you guys made a motion. Oh, wow. She's
I
made
make a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, nays? So, we have actually a few things to approval of minutes. Let's start with the May 2nd meeting minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of May 2nd, 2023.
Second.
Any discussions, fixes, concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
I also need a motion for the non-public session meeting minutes for March 7th. Right, March 7th. September 6th and May 2nd, those are the ones?
In non-public, you approve those because they're sealed.
That way you can talk about what's in them.
See one on seal?
When you're in non-public, you can approve those minutes.
Okay, thank you. Now I got it. We'll get those later, because we have non-public. All right, those all minutes are done. Reports, finance report, which is in our packet. Questions on finances, revenues, or expenditures? All right, seeing none, move on. Building and grounds, we did have a meeting right before this meeting. I know that the finance committee is gonna bring a couple things forward, so let's talk about a couple updates. The gym sound system, most of the parts are here. Just waiting for, the last thing is left for a speaker. Mr. Callahan knows this has to be finished by the end, before the end of June, because money was encumbered. If it doesn't, then this project may not happen. Sidewalk repair, I know the finance committee might bring something forward, so I'll wait on that. Batting cages, the nets are on order, but as we're putting it up, that is going to have to wait too, because we do not have the money to do it now.
We don't have a, sorry to interrupt you, sir. We don't have a price against which to encumber the money.
For the nets.
According to, for the nets were out of the budget, but the cages themselves.
Yeah,
I
we
wasn't
don't-
able to get a price in time for tonight.
Cages and somebody put them up, right? Yeah,
No, it's okay.
it's all right.
A sports thing. I'm with you.
So that one,
We need them desperately.
yeah, so we may have to look at a different plan.
We will.
I know cafeteria lighting and radio placements are coming up under finance, so I'll leave that alone. We talked about the tennis courts and track upgrades. The track itself, come down the road at some point, between $550,000 and $600,000 to totally resurface and that kind of stuff, but we got a couple years left. Tennis courts, to redo all of them, is between $500,000 and $600,000. Obviously, we're not be doing those anytime soon. We'll be looking at continue putting money into our funds until we can afford one of those. We also added to our agenda the flat roof. The flat roof that needs to be replaced at some point, which we were led to believe would be about $115,000, and we put in $150,000. Well, two different quotes have come back. First one was over $1 million a while ago. The second quote came back at $1.9 million. Needless to say, that project is also not being done anytime soon, and we'll have to work on some sort of capital plan over the next few years. You said there was, what, 19 years old?
The building will be 19 next year, yes?
So hopefully we can get 25 years out of it as we build up some capital to fix that roof. And that is end of,
I have a question about your quotes that you gave on the roof. Is that being paid for?
yes.
Yeah.
So those numbers included some cooling being added to the HVAC system.
You know what the bids are if you're going to do that?
Just for the roof, the new one was $900,000 by itself. It's a little more than we had in the capital plan.
So we might be looking at having to do some warrant articles.
Yeah,
Probably over a 5-year
Yeah, we're
period.
gonna-
Even for the athletic fields, it sounds like.
Yes.
we're gonna have to build up some money over the years. We can't do it in 1 year.
Money in the athletic fund, but it doesn't sound like it's gonna be enough.
We have about 200,000 in there right now.
It's gonna take a little bit.
The roof, we really, it doesn't leak. The only reason we were looking to replace it now a little bit ahead of schedule was because we could have leveraged some federal funds, but not to the extent of $1 million. So we do have time for that. Things like batting cages, I'll tell you, they're not in the capital plan that we developed here a few years ago with stakeholder input, including folks involved with athletics, including our buildings and grounds folks. Somebody put that into the capital plan. So clearly there's some work to be done to complete the capital plan so it actually includes everything that needs to be in there. The actual cost of building really good, you can buy a lot of different kinds of batting cages, but real quality ones, it'll be in the tens of thousands of dollars, but not 50. It's the kind of thing we should be able to manage when it rises to the top of the list. My concern now is what else is missing from the
Sure.
capital plan
That makes sense.
that needs to be done. You know, as the entire school enters its 19th year, you know, it's possible that it's been easy to not replace things because everything was new at the same time. 20-year-old stuff starts to need replacement. And we have an important 5 to 10 years of planning ahead of us for this school, because something that was, you know, not much is great after 30 years. Almost everything needs some replacement after 30 years.
For 60?
Check the husband or wife.
That's what he was.
Thank you for saying that, Eunice. Reassuring. 48 years this year. Whew. It's a long time to be married.
Anything else under buildings and grounds we should discuss? All right, no. Next, we move on to the student rep report. This your last one?
It is.
Thank you for doing that.
Graduation, all right.
Thank you. All right, so I don't have a lot this meeting, partially due to the fact that I haven't really been in school, and my last day was Friday. So as far as athletics go, girls tennis ended the season as state runner-ups with a record of 12 wins and 2 losses. Boys tennis ended with a record of 4 wins and 10 losses, but they did have fun, so that is important. The softball team has gone undefeated and is now headed to the state semifinals this Wednesday at Plymouth State University. The baseball team has a record of 13 wins and 3 losses for the season. They won their first playoff game before losing in the second round, but they had a really successful season, as did track, which recently ended, and they did very well. One student was the winner for the New Hampshire Art Educators Association Award and got to throw the first pitch at the Fisher Cats game this past Sunday, so that was exciting. She was practicing outside last week, so. The National Honor Society held a drive for the New Beginnings domestic violence shelter for women, and it was very successful. We collected quite a few items for that. The National Honor Society also ran a block party to support Boston Children's Hospital a couple weeks ago, which included food trucks and a local live band of students from Prospect. The senior trip to Portland, Maine went successfully, and there was no big problems. Everybody who went on the trip came back in whole pieces, so that was good. And I just wanted to say thank you very much for allowing me the time to sit on the board, and I learned a lot and enjoyed being here, so thank you.
Well, I think you did a great job, Grace. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Nice job.
I think Grace has been the most vocal and like involved in the discussion, so. I
Do
hope
we
that
want to
continues.
make you be a board member in your future life?
I think I would, yeah.
I think it's nice to have look going forward. I think it would be nice to have at least a junior,
Yeah.
somebody that could be here for a couple of years to,
I think it's a great idea. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I think that's helped, but yeah, great job. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you very much.
You can go.
The principal report is in our packet, or is handed out, I should say, either or. Does anybody have any questions or concerns on the principal's packet? This is our last board meeting. I'd like to acknowledge that Mr. Fitzpatrick is moving on. I want to say thank you for his service and his time, and I know he will be missed by a lot of staff and students, so I wish him well.
Ditto.
All right, SAU Central Office, Driver's Education Correspondence.
So Jack's Driving School will be shutting its doors for the last time at the end of this year, which leaves us looking for a driving school if the board wishes to host one. And some of you will recall that we haven't been getting competitive submissions when we go out looking for one. Jack's has been the only game in town. So we'll see. But there is seems like a strong possibility that we may go into next year without a driving school hosted here.
It would be helpful, I think, on the website, since we aren't gonna have driver's ed, if we could list some local driver's ed companies maybe that people have used, or, I don't know.
Someone wanna tell us what they are?
There's one in Epsom, we can give you, there's a
Yeah,
list
I
of
mean,
them.
I think there's a few.
Send us an email with a list, if you know any.
I'd still like to see us try to at
So you
least
might get it.
put out for it,
Yeah,
at least
yeah.
letting this, at least we show the students we are trying to get somebody here.
I think
So,
we should too, yeah.
we don't get
haven't
anybody,
in
we
the
don't-
past,
I don't
but-
get anybody.
I mean, there's a school in Wilkeboro, I think some people have used, one in Wilkeboro.
I know we're sending,
Concord.
Right, and there's one in Laconia. It's,
some places
And
going
we
to
should also
Pittsfield.
probably post something that as of right now, there will not be, so they
Right.
don't
Right, so
rely
they
on
can
the
s-
school to have something.
absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
and we can advertise as we normally would for submissions. I'm not using the word bids, because it's not quite the word proposals, RFP. So we'll advertise. I just think, unless there was something else going on that explains why nobody except for this one school was submitting to us, there's a chance we won't get anything.
Right, so maybe just a memo to students with a FYI,
Yeah,
letting them know, you know what I mean? You can put it out to bid, but also letting parents know that there's a possibility they may have to seek other options.
Alrighty. End user support and network administrative report. It's in our
In your packet,
packet.
is Matt still here? He was earlier.
Which one is it?
Submitted by Matt Dumont, three
Oh,
logos
this
at
one.
the top.
Questions, concerns? Seeing none, move on. Curriculum and assessment.
In your packet, you have my report, a few highlights. Personalized education, as you know, throughout the school year, we've been working with the faculty and staff on personalized education, as that is our mission, and we want to make sure that we are following our mission. So today, this afternoon, members of the faculty had the opportunity to present some of the things that they've been doing in their classrooms. Again, we've been focusing around grit and intellectual curiosity, since those are the two core values that seem to draw the lowest amongst our group of kids. So today we had a couple individuals who got up and spoke about what they've done and the reaction from the students. One particular faculty member was doing some through foreign language and traveling, and so she made it a game in terms of the Amazing Race, and kids were able to choose their own partners. There were 5 items that they could choose. They needed to choose 3 of them and work through the process on that, and she felt like the engagement of the students was far better using this approach than what she has done in the past. We had another individual who was looking at working with their kids and trying to figure out what they like to do when they grow up. So he was working with them on pathways and understanding what they want to do and really working with them to figure out what courses they should be taking throughout their high school career in order to prepare them for that piece of it. So some small pieces of that, and then hopefully we'll continue to grow on that for next year. Later on this evening, you'll have the revised professional development plan for Prospect Mountain. I say revised because it was approved not too long ago. This now finishes the alignment process for all 3 schools, so each one of them is exactly the same. And again, the idea is it's focused on the growth mindset, and people will have the opportunity to create personal goals. It could be 1, 2, or 3 years for their personal goals. And really what we set out to do is really get them to understand how professional development is connected to their teaching and learning, which then obviously helps them in that recertification process. So you'll have an opportunity to take a look at that. Some minor tweaks, not a lot, to the current plan. Observation, evaluation, revision, as we presented previously, I met with the team once again on May 8th to discuss the concerns with the proposal. Part of what came back was, in that plan, we had an improvement plan, the need for a rubric around the observation process, the language of how the process would work, a little more clear compared to what we got from feedback. The plan was revised. By removing the improvement plan, we created some rubrics based on the Marshall model, which is what this was basically tailored after, and then really kind of drilling down into the actual process. Unfortunately, at this time, we have not been able to reach an agreement. We were kind of ran out of time, which was disappointing because, again, I thought we were going to be able to pull it off, but we weren't able to do that. So we'll take a step back, and hopefully this summer we'll restart the conversations. Tonight you'll have in your packet the athletic director position. We had a committee made up of principals, a coach, the administrative assistant. We had 5 candidates that we put forward. One candidate chose not to interview a couple days prior to. The committee chose 2 finalists from the 4, and then those 2 candidates met with Dr. Broderick and myself for a second round. We had strong candidates with diverse backgrounds, and this evening we'll be presenting you the committee's choice for that role.
Who was on the committee? Who was comprised of?
So, Kara Robdow, John MacArthur, Drew Williams, the soccer coach, and Rachel Masachek and myself were on the first go-around. Jay was supposed to be on there, but after he let us know he wasn't coming back, so he stepped aside on that piece of it. And then the second round, Dr. Broderick and I met with them, the 2 finalists for second round of interviews. So, I also have for you this evening some preliminary information on our SAT results. And so I broke down the scores based off of composite as well as looking at proficiency levels. The goal will be this summer to kind of meet with the interim principal and the assistant principal to really dig down. And then obviously we'll be sharing this with the faculty and staff moving forward. But for this year, our scores came out with a combined average of a 992 compared to the state of 994. Our math scores for this year were 476 as an average, and our ELA was 516. When you look at sort of the proficiency levels, in ELA especially, we had 69% of our student population who were considered proficient in ELA, compared to the 59% of the state. Math, we're at 27% compared to the state of 35. We had 67 students who participated in the SAT. So, and again, this is just some preliminary information, and I'll be able to dig deeper at a later school board meeting.
And because you know I care, so I have talked to faculty here at the high school and also to the joint board earlier in the year about focusing on raw scores, actual scores, as opposed to whatever proficiency means as determined by the Department of Education, because frankly we don't know what it means. It's an arbitrarily set cut score. So if we look at comparisons between our students' actual scores and some standard, we might be able to learn something. So if our standard is the state average score, I'm just in the box at the very top of the first page. If we look at the last few years, the gap between our average student's math score and the state average is closing. We got 2 points closer this year. I'm not here to argue that that's where we want to be. We'd like to be at or above the state average, but the gap's closing a little. In ELA, however, I think this is excellent news that our students' average SAT score now exceeds the state average for the first time since 2017. And that is where we want to be. And beyond. Sorry to hijack.
Nope.
No, yeah. Anything else?
Nope, thank you.
Any questions? Matt? Who? All right. Superintendent's report.
a few things on the table for you tonight. So let's start, and I brought friends and presentations. Got all kinds of stuff for you. Let's start with a couple of outstanding items. Mr. Jazokis and I met with a faculty member who spoke to you during public comment last month regarding frustrations around field trips, and I don't want to speak for her, but I think by the time we talked, it's fair to say that it wasn't field trips per se
Okay.
that she wanted to talk about. We spoke for over an hour and had a productive conversation. That night, you had received an expenditure report in your packet. I don't know how many of you flipped to it, but take note for the future. Over half the money budgeted for field trip transportation had not been spent as of your meeting a month ago. As of tonight, $3,982 for field trip transportation has not been spent out of the current budget. Now, some will still be. There are trips going. This is a field trip time of year.
Right.
But we're not going to spend all of the money that's in the budget. So money is not the problem. And actually, it became clear during our conversation that that wasn't her perception, even though it may have sounded that way. Here, it's hard to stand up to the microphone and start talking. In terms of how field trip approval works at the high school, there is a Google form accessible to all staff. There it is on the screen up there. And they fill this out. My name's not there because it goes to me. My name's there because if I submitted this form, I would be the person requesting permission to take a trip. My class and grade, where I want to go, when, time, return date and time, and then what kind of transportation we'd be looking for, whether or not students would drive themselves, chaperone arrangements, and then if there are any costs and where that money would come from. Learning objectives for the trip, and then how the proposed activities support those objectives. That gets submitted and goes to the principal, and we never see it. This is an internal school process that I learned about in order to be able to show it to you.
Which makes sense.
That's how it works. On the other new outstanding issue, I just want to tell you, and this is, if this sounds like frustration, I want to tell you that it's not, because I think that you all value the opportunity for any resident or faculty member or parent or anybody to come in and have their voice heard, which is wonderful. At the same time, if an employee is frustrated by something that they perceive isn't working at the school after they've talked to their supervisor about it, there are other things they can do before they come to a school board meeting. And those things ultimately include coming to me. And I know things like we have over $15,900 unspent in our buildings and grounds budget right now for repairs and maintenance that could include repairs to athletic facilities, just for example. So if I know about an issue, I might be able to take action to address that issue through the people we employ to be responsible for those things. You know, I see a sign that's not straight up and down, and I might send an email to the facilities director and the principal and say, hey, I noticed that sign's crooked, and then the next time I go by, I hope to see that it's straightened, and if it's not, I might do something else. But if I don't see the sign, right, if it's another employee, a parent, one of you, anybody who sees that thing, there are ways to address that we might actually be able to do something about.
So back to the field trip, that gets submitted to the principal, correct? And then he or she.
And then it is up to, so they receive an email or verbal response, and I think the fundamental issue there was, I think in one case, the reason for not approving the trip was something that the teacher didn't agree with, and in another case, just felt that she didn't get a response.
Oh, okay. All right. Do they have a ratio of chaperones to kids? In
Yeah, 1 to 10.
1 to 10?
Specified down here somewhere. And I think you have that in policy as well.
Yeah, I was just curious, because that could hold up field trips too. You may not be able to get enough chaperones.
1 adult chaperone for every 10.
Okay.
If you can't read that. So for my report on the table, we have first, I've given you 3 sheets and a little folder. The first sheet is about behavioral services. And you're going to see this item on each of your other board meeting agendas this month, but it won't be this and it won't be me. It'll be Pam McDonald and Ruth Gruby talking to you more about the theory and workings of how we use behavioral services. Tonight, this from me is about how we pay for this stuff. And some of you are going to remember that when we developed our budgets for next year, we talked about the pretty significant amounts of money in contracted services, because as of September 1st, last fall, we did not employ a single registered behavior technician or a board certified behavioral analyst in our schools. In tonight's personnel report, we are nominating a BCBA to work for us full-time, 210 days a year, which is the same schedule that administrators like assistant principals and the director of guidance are on. So the school year is 185 days, 180 for students, 5 other PD days, and then we have a class of employee who work those additional 20 or 25 days, whatever that is, sorry. So that's what we're proposing tonight. That BCBA, if we can hire him as a shared employee, that means he's hired by SAU 301, that's you, the joint board here tonight, could supervise the RBTs, and we now employ 5 RBTs in our 2 elementary schools, and with a little bit of luck, by the time we're here in September, we'll have 6 RBTs running around. The financial impact is on the back of the sheet that I've handed you tonight. So this year, outsourcing for RBT and BCBA services at Alton Central School, we've spent over $150,000, 154 something. And at Barnstead Elementary, we don't have the breakdown because the same company provides both and just bills us a flat rate, and we've spent over $111,000. That's a total cost of over $265,000 in outsourcing, which is more expensive generally than having our own employees. So when we outsource, we want it to be because we can't hire people. There just aren't enough qualified people, licensed or registered people available, is the most common reason. But for whatever reason, we really want to only be outsourcing when we can't have our own employees. The shared cost of the BCBA, I have to estimate some of the benefit stuff, but would be about $131,000. Remember, salaries are just the beginning of our costs. But clearly that's a lot less than $265,000. What this creates, though, is an over expenditure in the high school budget, the SAU 301 budget, because this money, where we've budgeted for next year, is in the other 2 budgets. These are outsourced costs budgeted in Alton and Barnstead. So Heidi will have to figure out whether we have to keep explaining to you next year why we're going over budget at the high school, or if it's possible for you to vote transfers that are going to make this work for us. But the bottom line is that we spend less money. And I think actually, now that I've focused on the money and the money and the money, the reason I want Ruth and Pam to come talk to you at your meetings is because the more important part of this is that this is a better way to do this. Mm-hmm. That our service to students should be dramatically better. And by having our own RBTs and BCBA here in the system, we're not limiting what they do to students with disabilities. When we're outsourcing for this stuff, we read IEPs, we figure out how much behavioral service we need, and that's all we procure. So it's strictly for students, typically with autism, sometimes with other identified learning disabilities, but it's not. See, what we'll be able to do now is have people who have this deep background in behavior help all of our staff. Because just like when you talk about instructional methods in special education, it actually ends up coming down to the best ways to teach anybody. Like good instructional strategies are good instructional strategies for all kids. Good behavioral support strategies are good behavioral support strategies for everybody. So even though I'm focusing on the money here tonight because this is the decision that I'm asking you to make is to appoint a BCBA. It's actually even more about what it should allow us to do. That's the first part of my report. So questions, comments, discussion, or do you want to wait till you get to personnel, or you just want me to keep going?
His name is not on my personnel.
All right, we're going to ask you to appoint him. Next, do you want me to keep going?
Yep.
I've given you a memo on non-union employee wages and benefits. So this relates to a conversation we've been having throughout the year. After your last meeting, the joint board asked that Mrs. McLeod, Mrs. Landry, and I meet to look at, remember that grid of all the different benefits arrangements we have for folks who aren't covered by CBAs and all the different ways we have of paying different percentages for their health care and things like that. We did meet, made some progress, got employees categorized, and now I have homework to do with the folks in my office before we get together again, which I should have already done, but we're going to do it. In the meantime, in this memo, I'm addressing something that maybe I've hinted at, but not been as direct as this about. And it's the long-standing practice in these districts of using what you generally call the 3% pool, although this year it's the 3.5% pool, for awarding salary increases to non-union employees. In years when inflation is about or below 3%, that means that the average employee is keeping pace with inflation. Maybe not earning more money as a result of longer experience, tenure, being better at their jobs because they've been doing it longer, but just trying to keep pace with inflation. In the last couple of years since the pandemic, these wages have not kept pace with inflation. Inflation has been much higher. The federal COLA for people receiving Social Security was 5.9% last year and 8.7% this year, and we increased the raise pool to 3.5% for these employees. They all understand, I can assure you, that their earning power is going down every year. And since the joint board's last meeting, 6 of them have reached out to me to try to renegotiate their wages for next year. That is a labor-intensive way to do business, but without collective bargaining, it's the only way they can do it. Some of them report having gone to their direct supervisors and been told, well, there's nothing we can do because this is how it's done. So I understand the risk I'm taking with some of you, but this is, I think, the right thing to talk about, so we're talking about it. I'm not reading the whole memo to you. You can do that. I need a little time because I don't think that just asking for more money is the best way to go about this. I need to analyze, or have Sandy and Debbie help me analyze, what does this position pay in the 5 closest school districts? What does it pay with 5 years on the job, 10 years on the job, a bachelor's degree, a master's? In some of these positions, levels of education won't matter. In others, they will. And I think we need to do that work, to be fair. But you should be prepared that after we do that work, I'm going to end up sitting here telling you that I'm recommending some pretty significant increases for some of these employees. And to be honest with you, right now, we're about to mail them or hand them their contracts for next year. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to tell them that I'm working on this with your blessing, so that there's a better chance they're going to sign those contracts in a job market where there is a lot of availability.
Totally supportive of that. I think we have some groups that we've done market adjustments for already. I would, even though I'm supportive of them, I would recommend not including them in this. And typically in new positions, people usually negotiate on their way, and so those might be excluded.
So in the last 2 years, I brought you some market analysis of certain positions, and I think they are correct. Mm-hmm. but I'll still look at them and verify that. So I think what you should expect to see won't be a cookie cutter approach. It'll be, you just did this and it's okay. This one's not off by much, but this one and this one maybe need more significant adjustments. So I think it's better to take the time to try to get them right, might not be the right word to use, but as right as possible. I also want to give you a system so that I don't have to do this every couple of years,
Yeah.
because
Right.
this is a bunch of work. And,
It's
you know,
the unfortunate fact, and it is a fact, that if you're not in a bargaining unit, sometimes the only way to get ahead is to change districts and negotiate your salary. That's true all over the state, and it's really unfortunate.
So we just went through, we hired a company for all non-union to take a look at everything, comparables and everything else. And there was a lot of adjustment was done, but they also came through with a formula in the background to keep up with what was going on in the community, that, so you don't have to keep doing that work. And as long as we keep pace of what was, which kind of my commissioners agreed to, keeping pace with what that formula was put together for, we shouldn't fall behind. And then that, from there, they can choose to, if they want to go further, say, you don't want to pay more because the economy's good, but keeping pace of where they need to be. With those, we did the adjustments. Again, we spent 40 grand up front for the company to come and do it. They did the heavy lifting, including rewriting the job descriptions and everything else, but it's worked out very well for our county for retention and, you know, bring people in.
As I look at my IT staff, and every time I have somebody leave and how much we have to increase the salary to attract somebody in, it calculates out to me, for IT to be about 5%. You really have to keep up with a 5% increase per year to avoid losing people, but there's, that number exists for every position, yeah.
We did 10 last year, we're doing 6.6 this year for non-union.
some of these will be fairly easy. We have some employees, even though they're not in the same, in labor terms, we call it a community of interest, that some of our collective bargaining units are built out of. They are in similar roles in a lot of ways, so just looking at the scales in our collective bargaining units might be all we need to do for some, a few of these positions.
That makes sense.
The other recommendation I have, and I know Oyster River has done this, they've sort of made a non-union union with some of their folks. So for example, their administrators who aren't in a union, they get together and they work together on behalf of all of themselves. So they kind of come up with something reasonable, and then they talk with the superintendent about it. But that seems to be a really great, it works really well for them.
I want to make sure you're comfortable with the language I'm using, because I do want to communicate with these employees in the next couple of days that I've talked to you about this and am working on this. At a minimum, I think, and I've written this on the last page at the top, I envision 3 outcomes from this work. One is you can do retention bonuses using ESSER funds, so that doesn't hit your budgets and also doesn't become part of annual salaries for the future. It can be a one-time thing. Second, we'll look at salary schedules that are aligned with other districts in the area and other employees in our system. And then third, the benefits work we're already working on. And that's, just for everyone who wasn't there when Eunice and Pam and I met, that's a year-long process, but that really means it's a now until September, October process, because we need to budget for those things when we form the fiscal 25 budgets next October and November. And one of the things we talked about was what Pam just said, which was talking to the employees. What do you value more? This health insurance thing or that other thing or whatever it is?
Absolutely.
Yeah, question.
Okay.
Are you looking for, like the,
Is there,
Nod.
is there a consensus that he can continue looking at possibility of this?
Yes.
Can it be a hard no?
The biggest thing is that once I say something to employees and they know this is in the works, they're gonna expect something that.
I would just be very careful what you say to the employees. That,
Look at the language in
Very
the memo, and if
careful.
you have any feedback before the meeting adjourns, come back to this, please. Because I'll probably use some of the same
We
language.
can make it very clear, we're authorizing to take a look at these things, and maybe there's a possibility, but there's no guarantee.
bring us the findings, yes. I do like what you did before with the comparisons from the other districts and positions and such. I know you said we'll see something similar, I think that was helpful, I'd like to see that.
Yeah, makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Moving on, I think I have 3 more items, and I told you we have friends here, but we're not quite to them yet. This is the current draft of our website. So if you go to pmsau.org, you won't see this until we flip the switch and make it live, but we could do that literally in a matter of minutes.
It's kind of
at this
ugly,
point.
it's kind of ugly car in there, but.
And if we take the car out?
We're gonna work more on the photography. I actually was reluctant to show you this one first because of the photography, because what these headers are designed to do, if I go to the schools menu, you see Central Administrative Office, Prospect Mountain High School, Barnstead Elementary, and Alton Central School. Let's click right where I am on Alton Central School. And this is what the photos do when we've fully stocked the folder. And you get 3 to 5 seconds, whatever it is, on each one in a scroll. Across the bottom, you see Get Mobile App, and then in parentheses it reads soon. It will be for the start of next school year. The mobile app is actually really simple. It draws from all the same information that's on the website, but parents don't need to download that until August at this point, and that allows us to focus our efforts on refining and completing the site in the meantime. At the elementary schools, the next icon down here is Pickup Patrol. When you click these, if you're a parent, you go to your login for that system, and if you don't know what that is, you don't have a younger child who takes the bus. Howard School, on the high school site, this layout's very similar, but it reads Infinite Campus here instead, and same thing. You click there and it takes you to your student or parent login, to Howard School or to Infinite Campus. The lunch menu takes you to a Google Calendar that includes the lunch menu. It is the most visited page on every school website.
They're separated about it on
There's a My School Bucks link at each of the 3 schools. There's an athletics link, and then there's an employment link that guides the user to our, I almost said the wrong term. Thank you, AppleTrack system, which is part of Frontline. That's the word I was looking for. I'm gonna do more, but just so you see, if I go to Barnstead Elementary from this menu, hey look, none of these things changed, except that if I click the lunch menu, I get Barnstead Elementary's lunch menu, which is probably the same as Alton Central's because we have the same food service director and we're buying together to save a couple of dollars. But it does all the same stuff. So I go to Power School and I'm logging in as a parent in Barnstead.
Do
I see
those
great
pictures
photos.
update like as the year?
Yeah, we can change them anytime we want. Yeah,
And
we do
so,
that here.
where do you go to find a person? Like,
Person.
Directory?
yeah, like,
Staff?
that's, yeah,
So you wanna
Yeah.
email a staff
yeah,
member?
say I wanna email
Yep.
someone,
So I'm going to the part now. So if everything I've shown you right now, we're ready to go live.
perfect.
So here's why we're not quite there, is when you click the menu button up here, we see these 4 columns. If you were on your phone, they'd be stacked.
Yep.
So you'd see school administration, and then below that would be curriculum, and below that would be student services, and below that would be. We're still discussing is a word that I'll use. The best terminology for some of these, arguing is another word about the best terminology for these headers. They're the same for all 3 schools. So under administration, we start with the district calendar. We've got the PTO and PTSA. We're talking about separating out community information or community relations somehow, in which case that could get pulled out. And we could also include things like links to other social service organizations that might be useful to folks. If I've even forgotten now, I'm on the
You're in
Alton
Barnstead.
Barnstead. Where was I? I'm at
Barnstead.
Barnstead right now. But if I were on the Alton site, these would be the same links, but they would go to that school's information. So bus routes, for example, would appear in the same menu in the same location, but I would get Alton's bus routes instead of Barnstead's bus routes. Same with the Bell schedule and the student parent handbook. And I'm going to take a risk right now and look this is one of the
So,
ones.
you called that administration, when I read that, I thought I was gonna see the administrators' names and emails.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
and
so-
that, I mean, that's one of the biggest things.
Directory.
Yeah,
So the staff
when I wanna find
directory,
somebody.
we're gonna treat differently, but we can make it first. We could even put, we can put a link, we can put a button at the top of all this. So staff
Staff directory, right?
is here,
Right.
and there they are. But if you want them somewhere else, we can put them anywhere.
I have a counterpoint on the staff directory piece, based on my experience. I think it's important to have some of the staff in the staff directory, but in today's cybersecurity climate,
Yeah, the emails.
they get phished so hard because they're on the staff directory. And I had literally 4 paraprofessionals go out and buy gift cards this year with their own money because of phishing. We took our staff directory down. I'm not sure that paraprofessionals should be on there. I'm not sure, like, I think the high level, the office folks, the counselors, and then I don't know, we direct our parents to go in through our app to see their child's teachers and everything else and to get their email addresses.
I don't think that paraprofessionals should be on there.
Oh, I agree, I don't think paras should either, but I
I-
think if I'm a parent and wanna email my child's teacher, I know a lot of the teachers give that to the parents when they first start school, but there has to be a means for them to be able to contact them.
Yeah,
I go in through Infinite Campus at the high school and look, or through Power School in the elementary.
it's
school.
just clunky. It's just very, I mean, it would just be nice to be able to go to the website and go, oh, that's in a reasonable place, and I can click on it and I can email the teacher.
So we can put anything we want along the bottom here. So if we want the staff directory down here instead of here, we can do that. It eliminates a click.
I think the school administration title should be changed. To I don't know what, but it has something to do with school administration.
Well, welcome to my world.
Yeah,
I don't
that's,
know
I was
anybody.
expecting to see
I
the
expected to
administrators.
see the
Right.
administrators' names, yeah.
I would think that would bring you to like you, the principal, the school board, things of that nature.
That's good feedback.
And I also think you should probably contact risk provider Primex, who may have some input about, like Pam just said, about putting people's email addresses on phishing. They just put on a whole cyber thing all about that. So I would contact them and get their opinion.
So if parents go into Power School and Infinite Campus, they can email teachers.
Absolutely, yeah.
But like K through 5 or pre-K, they don't have Power School. Like, we
They
don't
do.
use it. We use
It's- you may
Google
not-
Classroom.
Well, you have Google Classroom too. You may not be encouraged to use Power School, but you do have it.
Okay.
So the other piece is if you know the pattern, it's really easy to form, elementary, you have one teacher and most parents know who that teacher is. It's when you get into middle school and high school that gets a little harder to figure out, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
So-
even, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
It's frustrating when you can't contact somebody. I don't even know who to call at the high school after 4 years of who to call if I need to get my daughter dismissed.
I think that's difficult because it's based on a person, not based on a function. So there should be an email address like attendance or dismissal, or instead you have to know that this email needs to go to this specific
Yeah.
person. I have no idea either. I make my husband do it. He's used to it by now, but yeah, I really,
Do you know what I
I'm
mean?
with
But
you,
that's,
yeah.
I mean,
Why
that's,
don't they have pickup patrol for high school? I mean, because it's absent, you have to call when your kid's absent, right? Regardless if you're in 10th grade or 4th grade.
well, you have
and
to
9th and 10th graders.
call
you're
even when
still
they're not
picking kids
absent,
up a lot of
because
the
they don't
time.
know if they're here or not.
Dismissing, absent, athletics, I mean, the list when pickup patrol, it's like, you have like 15
Listen.
things.
Pickup patrol is, I think you have a good point. It's overkill for some of the older kids who drive, but you still have a couple of years in there and it's a really inexpensive product to use.
Well, it's an app, right?
Yeah, and the cost for the school district is really low, yeah. It's a nice product.
I'm not
This
so
is why
sure
you're
I want
laughing.
pickup patrol for my high
I-
school,
I-
to be
I
perfectly
have a
honest with you.
feeling
That's a little
that you're
insulting.
the majority.
It's a
But-
little
Well, right, but
insulting.
then you can just go in
Sure,
there
what
and
she's
say
saying
she's
is
absent.
you
I-
can put,
listen.
you can call them, you can dismiss them.
You don't have to talk to the office when
I-
you want to pick her up, you just put it in.
Yeah,
I
I'd rather not talk to
prefer not to,
anybody,
but-
ever.
So,
I
always forget the
I
mortgage
know, but
company.
it would be, I mean, I just think having an attendance thing, it's just,
Or call it something else.
we could call it something else
Yeah.
perhaps, but it's,
Yeah, we're not gonna-
Yeah, I think you're right. Those are things to talk about, I think the.
Things to
interim
discuss.
Principal with, yeah.
It's a good discussion piece, but if we don't wanna be here all night, it's what we can pick up later.
We have had some compliance, it's a terrible header, this is another one, we'll probably change, compliance is not a good header. But there has been some information either missing or difficult to find on, it's inconsistent across the 3 sites. But again, these are the same menus for each school. So some of our required Title I, Title IX
Right.
information, a place to submit, this goes to a Google form, submit a bullying or harassment report, same with the theft and vandalism report. One of our schools had this as a Google form, the others didn't, so now they all will. It will take us realistically through the summer to kind of go through all of these links and create the content for the schools or school that doesn't have it. You know, like some of this is just going to take a little more time.
Is there a way to?
That's not a reason not to go live though. We can go live with, for example,
I don't think we
Coming
should
soon.
go live half-ass.
Well, in the summer, I think what he's saying.
I mean,
is-
summer's a great time for that.
I mean, we wanna be open enrollment, we don't want people to start with our website and think that we're a mess.
Whoops.
Is there a way to share that, as you work through this, with just the school board as the beta testers to go through it? If we had a login to be able to go look at it and give you feedback that way?
If you have a Thrillshare account, doesn't that sound like fun? Yes.
That just sounds wrong. Oh, it sounds
You're to find out.
The only thing I am feeling like a stickler about is this part. So rather than have policy manuals and school board information on each of the 3 school sites, on the central office site, we have school board. And until this, the format we want to use is, I kept it open here.
oh my God, how many tabs do you have open?
And what's
I
translate,
have a lot
in
of
case
tabs
there's somebody
open.
here that
You're
speaks
welcome.
another
You
language?
should stop by sometime.
Most of-
Yeah, we can translate into, I don't know, 100 different languages.
It is.
Yeah, you can just click Spanish and you get it in Spanish, but you can also search a whole bunch of other languages, apparently not Swahili.
It's
Couple
okay,
pike.
you don't have to do it, Tim. I get it.
Yeah, I like having all that information right there though, in one,
So until we have agendas and minutes, who you all are, we're on our way.
well, I mean,
Oh,
they're
now
at
it's
the
old.
post
See,
office.
so the way Apogee does this is they port over your existing information, and then we go through with them to do the editing. That's the part that'll continue
Right.
for the next several weeks. Once this is correct and we have policy manuals here, I have some weird preferences about how the policy manuals work. I think they should be searchable,
Yeah.
but also sorted by letter code. So right now we have 2 extremes. At the 2 elementary schools, they're sorted by letter code, but you can't search on a keyword. So if you don't understand what policy is likely to fall under students versus the other, 7 categories, you've got almost no chance of finding it.
Right,
Versus at the high school, it's very searchable because the entire policy manual is one giant document. Notice how long it's taking to load?
Oh, that's not good.
My computer is not this slow.
That's terrible.
This is because the policy manual, it's still loading.
It's not good.
It's still loading. Remember how fast the photos were? Going back? Now I have the one Google Doc that contains the entire high school policy manual.
Ooh, that's not good.
The only good thing about it is it's super searchable,
Yeah.
but that's not good.
could it
So-
be broken up or,
So the way they're doing it for us, we don't have to do this ourselves, is their Apogee is creating searchable but broken down individual policies by letter code
I
and
would,
heading.
again, just based on experience, strongly recommend keeping that kind of stuff in Google and then just embedding it on the website
Mhm.
and make sure it's searchable, because that way in the future, if you change website providers, you're not changing your whole libraries every time.
The only, I know we've been on this for a while and I apologize, the only other thing I wanna show you is, this is the high school site today, and there's one field here. These are the latest tweets by the principal, and then there's like a slideshow down here. And then this is the slideshow, I think, that shows on the monitor in the lobby of the school. This all goes away, and instead, if I can find, where did that put it? Oh, it's because I opened the policy manual, isn't it? Here, go back. Should be faster. Okay, so what I didn't show you before, let's go back to Alton this time, is this isn't the whole page. It looks like it, doesn't it? But if you scroll, we have events, news, and live feed, and these are the only other things I want to show you tonight. The events scroll is pulling from the school's internal and external Google calendars. We can customize how that works, which means every event listed on the calendar is here. If we go to the high school, and we go to the events calendar, here it all is. Information that I've heard some people at times complain has been a little bit difficult to access. The high school already uses Google Calendar for all this stuff, so all we had to do was link it, and it worked immediately. This also connects to the calendar hosted on Big Teams, which is a separate website that the NHIAA requires us to use for scheduling athletic contests. That means that all of our sporting events, once they're scheduled in Big Teams with the NHIAA, will also show up here. When we have rain delays or cancellations, we're actually required to tell them, and they post it. And then in the past, we've also had to figure out what to do with that information. This has been set up so that once it's been posted on Big Teams, it shows up right here in the events calendar.
That's good, because it's been difficult to find athletic schedules.
And then the last thing is news and live feed. The platform, I already made fun of it, that Apogee provides is called ThrillShare. Those of us who use it can download the ThrillShare app on our phones. Now I'm just having fun saying it. And we can give administratively access to our employees to post news and to social media. So the live feed is for social media posts. Matt Dumond has been working with us to create and has created Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. I know we already had the Facebook accounts, but we're actually going to change those a little bit. If you look at what folder I gave you, the little booklet, under tab 2, we have a design for the Facebook pages that matches the rest of our stuff now. So one for Alton Central, one for Barnstead Elementary, one for Prospect Mountain. So they are different, but also have a lot in common. And we already have those accounts. When you're in ThrillShare, and say I go in there and I post something about an upcoming board meeting, or I take a selfie with all of you in the background. So much fun to be with the joint board tonight at Prospect Mountain High School. I can then, in ThrillShare, post that to all of those platforms at the same time. I can send a phone call to parents. I can send a text or an email to groups that we define in the system, and it can all be done at the same time. This means that coaches at the end of an athletic contest can go into ThrillShare and only have access to their own parts, right? The things we want them to be able to do. And we can require things, for example, like post the score. As soon as the game's over, post the score. And boom, it'll show up in the live feed on our website in addition to wherever else we ask for them to be. And then news we control from within the school, but again, we can distribute the ability to create news stories, as well as create some rules around them, like no news without photos. That's one of the rules. So that's probably a little more of an overview than you'd you'd hoped for when you looked at your clocks, but that's the overview of where we are. We have on the existing high school website, I'm gonna move on. On the existing high school website, we have a spot, resources for open enrollment public hearings. We started at a meeting this morning. We're gonna change that this week to open enrollment information. We're gonna move it up, and we are going to begin taking expressions of interest. You could call them applications if you want for open enrollment after this meeting. So maybe as soon as tomorrow, but certainly this week. And I know that that's something a lot of you have been curious and concerned about, and that's where we are. A couple of changes to what I last reported to you on open enrollment. Things have gone really well with the Department of Ed. We will have an apply here, like I just said, link on the high school, the existing high school website. We have a whole open enrollment page on the new site that we already took enough time on that. We can look at it later. We are actually using one of those generic email addresses, admissions@pmsau.org, and that'll go to more than one person. I have a meeting set up to go over the admissions policy that we've drafted. You'll have to approve it eventually, but we kind of have to do all these things at the same time this year. Everything that I wrote in a memo to you last meeting or the meeting before is the same. Up to 30 incoming 9th graders, up to 10 incoming 10th graders, upper class students only if they are siblings of those incoming 9th or 10th graders. One change because of the late date, I think initial applications by July 7th, and then we need to give sending schools time to produce transcripts. Part of an application includes a release of transcript information. So that gives us to the third week in July, and once we have that information, the way I anticipate this going this year, it's not like there's going to be a big selective admissions process. I think we're going to have a small handful of families we're talking to, and we'll be talking to them the whole time, and we'll wrap it all up by the beginning of August, and then I'll let you know where we stand, because your guess is almost as good as mine, I think, at this point about exactly how that's going to go.
But are you gonna need approval on the enrollment policies and all the procedures before August, if you're having people apply?
So if we're in a situation coming to your August joint board meeting, which is your next one, right? It's okay. We'll know how many applications we've received. So if it's more than the 30 and or the 10, and we do need to have some kind of a selective or ranked admissions process, by then we'll have received the Department of Ed's feedback on how that can work. We've drafted a points-based ranked admissions process that the department may or may not say looks fine. And if they say it doesn't, I'll be able to tell you that, hopefully by that meeting. And if we have fewer than that number of students, then it won't matter, right? Because if they meet whatever basic criteria we've set, then it won't matter. So at your next meeting, if we need to have that conversation, we'll be here and we can have that conversation. And then we can get back to those families that week.
As a side note, before I forget, the calendar there, I don't know where it feeds from, but it says that we have a July 4th meeting.
We do.
Debbie, do you want to handle
No, we don't.
this? You do.
I don't. Just
Fireworks
FYI.
and library.
Do you,
Well, I'll take it down.
I don't just want to blow through this open enrollment stuff and not have more conversation about it, but at the same time, everyone knows how up in the air this first year is.
Right.
You want me to move on? Because
I
I've got
mean,
one more item and finally we get to our friends.
There's not much to talk about, I don't think, until you start getting applicants and go from there, right? I
Right.
mean, other than that, it's,
I
So,
think
yeah, let's see what
there's going to
happens.
be some people think it's going to be easier than I do, and some of them are here. I think there could be a pretty involved interactive process with the boards and superintendents in other districts before we can work things out.
So the application itself is not up yet, so
Tomorrow.
tomorrow, okay. Because I
Thursday.
told you I have some
Yep.
parents
Yep.
from different districts.
That's why I need to get it up there.
I-
And it's going to be pretty light, because again, I think this is all going to be very interactive this year. I have a more, so I came from a district where we had admissions, where every single student had to apply. So it wasn't easy, it wasn't hard to develop an admissions process that's based on points, because I already had it. So I adapted it. So instead of certain things that that school had identified were important skills or competencies or traits for students, I used the core values identified at this school. So when a counselor or teacher writes a letter of recommendation for a student, which is optional under this system that I'm proposing, but if they want the points, they might want to do it. The question, the prompt to the teacher or the counselor is, in these areas that align with our core values, how would this student be an asset to our school?
So is the applications going up tomorrow on the Prospect Mountain?
On the Prospect website. It's the only one that exists right now anyway.
All right.
The other stuff only exists in Thrillshare.
How many more times can you say it?
Thrillshare? Oh, give me time. All right, ready? Shifting gears again. So I think Lauren is the only member of the joint board who was not here in April of 22, which is the night I did a slides presentation on these two linked ideas, how open enrollment and this innovation school idea. Remember this?
Yeah.
The online
It's on
blended
our
thing that we
Facebook
haven't talked
page, I
about for a
think.
few months?
I do.
Right, I did a presentation a year ago, a little longer, on how these two ideas interact with each other. How open enrollment under RSA 194D might provide the revenue stream that would allow a district like SAU 301, so let's just say this district, to create an innovation school, which New Hampshire has a law allowing districts to create, but then open it up to students from all over the state. And unlike the open enrollment we've been talking about, where students actually come here, we could have an online school. And we've been working under a grant that the Commissioner of Education gave us. You know this, most of you, almost all of you. We have about $250,000 in the grant to develop this idea, to work toward a pilot program. And we've been doing it. And in here, under the back tab, you'll notice that the Granite State Academy logo looks a lot like the Alton. Does everyone have one of these?
Yeah, no, you took one.
You can have this
It's
one.
like one of those goats.
It looks a lot like the Alton, Barnstead, and Prospect Mountain logos. It uses the same type, it uses the same sorts of icons. It's a hawk instead of a timber wolf or a bear or whatever a mountaineer is. These are postcards that we've actually sent to a mailing list of about 650 or so families that homeschool. And we had folks, we had kids attend 2 camp, 3 days and 2 nights camps. I'm looking at, and he's nodding, Rob Ellis from TL Storer, who's been our partner in providing those, again, funded by this grant, not by our taxpayers. And if you look at the second postcard that we've copied here, the one with the kid paddling the kayak, it's for a camp that runs June 19th through 21st, which hasn't happened yet. This postcard is in the mail right now and arriving at those families' homes today, tomorrow, the next day, this week, which gives them about a week to register, which they can do by scanning the QR code that's on the back. That takes them to a Google form, which includes a packing list for things kids need to bring, more information about the schedule and the program and the kinds of things. I think this time it's things like rock climbing and kayaking like we see in the photo, and he's nodding again for the record. This is the in-person piece, right? The outdoor education piece of this blended online and in-person school. How am I doing, Rob? You want to help?
Do you need help?
Conceptually, the idea here is, nobody's allowed to answer that question. The idea here is that, so for those who don't know, TL Storer used to be a Boy Scouts of America camp. So they have an incredible amount of knowledge and skill when it comes to Scout merit badges, which are essentially competency-based education. Kids learn from a certified counselor, certified for a particular competency area, not by DOE, but like I'm a fly fishing merit badge counselor, or I used to be, according to the Boy Scouts of America. So when my son, who's an Eagle Scout, was in scouting, he wanted to get the fly fishing merit badge. We both do that, so I went through the process to get certified to do that. So unlike me, they have dozens or hundreds of these that their folks are good at. So what we've talked about is building programs for kids when they're at these in-person things that are essentially based on the existing merit badge system without calling it that. It's not scouting, it's just in-person camp competency-based outdoor education, which kids tend to enjoy. At least a lot of kids do. Then there's this virtual part, the going to school online for people who want to do that. And Peter Stewart, who some of you have met from K-12 education, does that for a living. They run, Peter, how many online schools in how many states?
Over 100 in about 36 states that we help them manage. We sell courses to everybody.
Come on up, Peter. It's about to be your show. So in my memo, because now I've asked you to look at a whole bunch of different things, I gave you sort of a synopsis of what we've done since we got the grant money. It was finally released to us in January. So over the last few months, we've done the identity stuff consistent with the other things. There will be one day, if I were back in ThrillShare, where the drop-down menu is on the new website that takes you from central office to Prospect Mountain to Alton to Barnstead, Granite State Academy. We just add it to the list, and then you get a site just like the other sites for this innovation school. The process of getting it approved and making it a real thing is going to take another year. But in the meantime, we're ready to run a pilot here. And we built the grant, I'm getting to Peter, and why he's actually traveled here from Montana today to talk to us. When we wrote the grant, we wrote, this is enough money that if we're paying K-12 and paying for the in-person stuff and spending all this ARPA money, we can have 20 to 25 kids in our first year cohort. And recently, in one of our development meetings, we made two kind of important tentative decisions that I'm here to consult with you about. And one of them was, what if a child doesn't want the in-person stuff? Can we just give them an online school? And our thinking is, why limit the market available, or the market share we could have? Why not allow that option for New Hampshire students who are strictly looking for an alternative to VLAX, which some kids who have tried VLAX are looking for, from what I understand. So our answer was yes, that should be an option. So where we've arrived, and it's in my memo, but I'll just tell you, where we've arrived is, you can earn a diploma from Granite State Academy by being an online school student. You can earn a diploma from Granite State Academy with a pathway distinction in one of 3 focus areas that relate to outdoor education, which by the time you're in high school you have to choose and then complete a capstone project in. And those are outdoor leadership, which is like the traditional, I take wilderness first aid and go backpacking and kayaking and climbing and things like that. Regenerative agriculture, because we also enjoy the benefits of Mr. Ellis's sudden interest in farming over the last couple of years, but he has staff who know their stuff and are really good at this, and can help, again, our students who may come from agricultural communities and feel some connection to this idea, this pathway. And then the third one, environmental conservation, which could tie more to the online academic classes the kids are taking in the sciences, but then they can create outdoor capstone projects to demonstrate learning in that area. So that was big decision number 1, is blended the only way to do this? And our answer is no. We can provide it as an option. Big question number 2 was, what if more than 20 to 25 students respond to our social media campaign this summer, and we don't have enough money in the grant to pay for that to happen next year? Which brings us back to Peter, who represents K-12 education. You want to take it from here?
Sure. I think at the meeting in April, you guys had just received a letter from the general counsel to the commissioner. Tim had asked the question, would this be funded under open enrollment? Would this be, a program like this be eligible, an online program be eligible for New Hampshire funding? And the answer was an unequivocal yes. And so what you have is, I think, at the Department of Education, some champions who want to see innovation. And so the funding should flow to any student above the grant level based on the fact that they're a resident and an eligible student in New Hampshire. And they would be in a SAU 301 student. The money will not flow easily because it'll be new. There'll be districts that will say, well, I never heard of this before, I'm not going to send it. And there could be some cash flow issues there. But we operate nationally, we're used to that. So we would make sure that the funding was available for day-to-day, wouldn't impact your budget. But we don't feel like we're going to have a fight with the Department of Education at all. In fact, the legislature this past session has been very kind of in favor of giving parents more choices. And I think this would just be another one of those available to students and families in New Hampshire. It may appeal initially just to homeschoolers, but I think it'll grow well beyond that over time for sure.
So the short version is, with your blessing, Peter's company will send me an engagement letter that essentially creates no financial risk to SAU 301 if there are problems getting revenue to flow, including an out clause if it all falls apart. Now, if that happens, I got to tell you, he's going to go to another district in New Hampshire and someone's going to do this. It's not a question of whether or not it happens, it's a question of who does it and how soon. I would then send that engagement letter from K-12 education to your attorney, have it reviewed to make sure that your financial interests are protected first and foremost, and then I would bring it to you, because this is not something I'm doing tonight. So that's kind of where we are and what we're asking to do. Simultaneously, however, around the 4th of July, when Ann's at a board meeting, we're going to be on social media introducing Granite State Academy, a new online or blended school for students who reside in New Hampshire, and taking applications. And it could become something faster than we're imagining. So I'd want you to be prepared for that. Politically, although I agree, this isn't usually how this works, but I'm going to be the more conservative one here on this tonight. Politically, though the legislature and the State Board of Education are very much, have signaled a lot of support for opening up additional options for families in public education, that doesn't mean it will be not controversial. There is likely to be some controversy around this idea. Now, at the same time, I'll play both sides of the fence. VLAX exists, and that was worked out. But VLAX doesn't require our district to write a check to help pay the cost of a student who resides in Alton or Barnstead and chooses to enroll there as a full-time student. So there's likely to be some kind of controversy, but Peter's absolutely right. I think the political will in this state exists, that it's going to get worked out, and ultimately this will work, whatever that means and however long it takes. Right?
That's right. And even in states where there isn't a lot of support, ultimately the parents are very persuasive. They'll talk on behalf of their child because the local school doesn't work particularly well for them. And we've been doing this now, I've been doing it since 2000, 2001. And New Hampshire's ready for this in ways that other states weren't and still have their programs.
Peter, do you feel like most of the states you work in have moved towards a public school choice, sort of model?
Yeah, I think what you end up with is different ways of working. In some states, they're all about charter schools. And so like in Colorado, it's a very charter school friendly state. There's lots of charter schools. The districts have figured out how to work with charter schools. In other states, like in Indiana, it's open enrollment. And so like if you're in Phoenixville, which is right across the bridge from Louisville, you'll see billboards in Phoenixville from other school districts talking about their bus routes. So they'll take kids from Phoenixville and bring them over to, you know, the next district nearby, and they've all kind of worked it out. The bright, shiny object of school choice right now are these ESAs, educational savings accounts. So Florida has a big one, Arizona has a big one, you have one. You have Iowa just passed one, South Carolina's thinking about it, Texas is gonna have a special session on whether or not they wanna do it. And those are more like old school vouchers, where the funding is available for the student to go to whatever school they wanna go to, including, you know, religious, private schools. And so each state kind of emphasizes one thing over the other. What was interesting about the letter that Tim got was that the legislature didn't know that they already had the law on the books. No one had used it. Tim kind of asked them about it, and their immediate reaction was, well, we're going to pass something like that. And Tim said, well, no, you actually already have it. And by golly, they did. So, I mean, I think that in every state, it's always controversial. In some states, charter schools are a good thing. In other states, I'm working in Nebraska, you can't say the word. People lose their minds. But school choice in general is moving, especially after the pandemic. It's moving in a lot of states. Red, blue, purple, doesn't really matter.
I can't remember, I feel like a couple of years ago, so I'm, children of staff members who work in the district, who live out of town.
You did.
We discussed this a couple of years ago, and did we land on, we would allow them to come here, or did we land on, we would need the home district to pay tuition?
So
Or did we land?
where we landed for that from then until now-ish
Yeah,
was that it would be a percentage of our tuition cost
okay.
that roughly aligns for qualifying families with what New Hampshire allows in an EFA. Now, not everyone would qualify for an EFA. It's the limit to spend what used to be about $5,800, I think, for a family per student out of an educational freedom account in New Hampshire was 3 times poverty, so $75,000-ish, something like that. That number in the EFA changes from year to year might be a little bit more now, but that was our temporary approach, right? Our temporary approach at the time, just to open the door. Now, with open enrollment approved by both legislative bodies, my message to staff is, fill out an open enrollment application for your child. I'm going to send a bill to the district where you live. And then we'll see what happens.
So maybe I missed this, but it says there were 2 in-person academies already?
There have been 2 and there's one more. We just didn't do a postcard for the first one.
So
We didn't think of it.
How many students did you have attend?
They've been really small. Rob, you want to come up and tell some stories? Sure. I mean, so we're not right now trying to pull kids out of their public schools, right? Because
Right.
we're not offering a school.
We're offering.
We're trying to learn from how this in-person stuff can. What have we learned, Rob?
So I think we've had 6 to 10, depending on which one you went through, and they have been current homeschool students. So look and see how that approach works. And basically, what we're doing is, as Tim said, Scouting has a pretty good curriculum, and especially somebody was talking about growth mindset. Scouting is the original growth mindset curriculum. If you literally take it from 1911, that's what it is. And it's all about failure, learn to do it, succeed, tie a knot, don't tie the knot right, those sort of things. So our first one, we did basically what we would do in just kind of a scouting environment. It was tie knots, light fires, build things, those sort of things. We worked on, your handicraft. Our second one, we did agriculture. That was really popular. We fed cows. We did rotational grazing, which is getting into kind of a way to fight climate change and those sort of things and how we impact it. So that was our second one. Our third one, we're going to go high adventure, and what works really good is we have an infrastructure. So TL Store was donated to Scouts in 1958. It was a fully functioning Scout camp up until about 2019. And at its heyday, there were 1,000 kids a week that spent their time there. We have a climbing tower. We have 2 ponds with waterfronts. We have all that. So we're able to utilize, we have a climbing tower with instructors that we bring in. We have all the different things that are already there, and it's putting those together to kind of accommodate the kids. We have for the last, this will be our second year, last year we did the summer enrichment program for Barnstead Elementary and Alton Central schools. We did that this year. We've taken the lead role in that for the school, and we handle the registration, we're handling everything. So I think as of right now, we have a little over 200 students registered for about 400 weeks, if you take how many are doing multiple weeks. And we're also getting kids from outside of the Barnstead-Alton community. So we're seeing Barrington, Raymond, Loudon, we have some registrations out of Loudon. We have Chichester, Epsom, Gilmanton. So we're seeing this, it's kind of growing as that is. What we're finding is kids are outside and they're enjoying that outside and they're enjoying that piece of it as well. We have kids who have come up from your existing elementary schools that normally have paraeducators and one-on-ones, and they come without it, and they're successful in that outdoor environment. So it's just expanding that ability is what we're doing, and this fits into it. And there's a lot of kids that just don't fit in that brick and mortar school, but we're able to, there's 135 basically merit badges that the curriculum is already written for. And it doesn't matter if you're a scout, not a scout. We've been doing this out of our camp in Massachusetts now for almost 8 years. We find that about 70% of what we do is not scouting related, but it's offering the same curriculum. It's the, how do you tie the knot? How do you, so my son Shiloh's here, he teaches our welding. So it's a welding piece. And what the goal of the merit badges were was this exposure to all these different things, and then maybe you say, hey, I really want to do that. And it gave you that kind of that entryway into learning something that you didn't normally, and you can do it in 3 or 4 days. So the courses are set up, the way the classes will be, I think because we've got set up, be like 6 times a year, 3 days, come in, meet your cohorts, we'll do some fun activities that'll loosely tie into whatever the education piece that's going on as we can and do that. And that's what the kids get to do. But for us, it's kind of easy because it's what we've done. We've been doing it for quite a while, and it just gives us some kind of advantages in this sort of world. And it's already set up. It's not like the SAU has got right now. We got to find somebody to do climbing. Now we got to find somebody that's going to teach first aid. Now we got to get lifeguards. Now we've got to. We already have that. And as well, when it's on our site, it's us doing it. It's not the school. There's not to say you guys aren't involved, but you guys really aren't involved in that day-to-day operation. We're licensed, we're insured, we have all of that, how to do it. For obvious reasons, nobody has better youth protection actually in the world now than we do today. We actually have the gold standard for youth protection for all of our instructors that have to go in and go through it, so everybody does. In fact, we are employing, I think, 3 district employees this year. They have to go through our thing as part of the summer program. One of them is as part of ESSER funds. You guys think where they still have to go through our we don't accept the background checks you do. It's our YPT, so we take it out. So it's a neat program for it. I think of the kids that have been there's about a half a dozen of them that already expressed their interest in they want to enroll. I know there's one definite that's waiting till there's that thing. Actually, no, there's 2 that are ready to go and enroll, and they're just kids that don't want to be in a brick and mortar school. And that's their thing, and they're not thriving in it. We got them, we spent time with them, and it was amazing the difference that they had when they were here. So I think it's a win for everybody. Is that good?
Is that good?
Very exciting.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we do very much downplay the scout piece of it because there are people who are like, no. So in scouting, there's the reverent piece, there's all that. That's not as part of this. We're literally just taking the pieces, the fun education pieces, and that's what we're using, none of the other stuff of it, because we leave that aside, because that can be, well, I don't want that, I don't want this, and we try to accommodate it. And the same way we're doing our summer program, like parents go through, and it's like, my kid wants to do these 6 topics, and then we built how their summer is going to go, and the kids are bouncing around and doing different things, so keeping them engaged.
Sounds personalized.
Sounds that way to me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I apologize for the long report. I know that you don't want to be here for this long, but it's the last time we see you. until your August meeting. And these are not regular school district things. We're doing some things that are unusual, and this is my only opportunity to talk to you about some of this stuff.
Sure. I think it's great.
Good on any questions or concerns? All right, moving right along to action items then. Acceptance of the FY '22 audit.
We have 3 things from the finance committee. One's missing, it's encumbrances.
Did you hand that out to all the board members?
I did.
Okay. So Heidi's recommending the FY '22 audit as the first thing.
Make a motion to accept the FY '22 audit.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nope. All right.
I'm gonna squeeze this in before the copier bid. We have 3 encumbrances which weren't on the agenda. One is general fund end of year balance request. The fund balance is actually gonna be pretty tight this year. So we're only looking at concrete walkway sidewalk repair
Oh, that's
for
true.
$12,420. So that's a motion. I move that we encumber $12,420 for the concrete sidewalks.
This is also a recommendation from the Buildings and Ground to do this as well.
Okay.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nope. Perfect.
The next one is cafe lights. Those are on the side of the cafeteria. This is not regular budget. This is coming from Fund 5.
Bless you.
And Heidi is proposing the lower of 2 quotes for $7,147.
Make a
Also
motion.
recommended by Buildings and Grounds.
Okay, I make a motion to accept, to accept the lower bid for $7,147.
I'll second.
Any discussions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No.
Number 3 is a budget transfer. This is a motion, by the way. I move that we request a budget transfer. This is related to teacher professional development from the retirement line. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. To cover the professional development line in the amount of $35,000.
Second.
Discussion. I'll just wait on things. All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Perfect. Passes.
And just informational, it's looking like potentially a $70,000 food service loss right now this year.
Well, that's fine.
And then we have the copier bid. I'll read this off. 2 motions. Motion 1, I move that the board approve a tax-exempt lease with MST Government Leasing LLC for refinancing and funding photocopier equipment leases, including consultant fees, and related costs not to exceed $182,785.77. That's at an interest rate of 5.24% per year through August 1st, 2027.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes.
And then, do we need this second motion? Really? Alright. I hereby move that the board authorizes the superintendent to execute and deliver the tax-exempt lease with MST Government Leasing LLC on such terms and conditions discussed and provided to the board, and to execute and deliver any such documents required to execute the contract with Specialized Purchasing Consultants Incorporated.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none again. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nope. It passes.
Okay, all done.
Very well done, Pam.
Awesome. Professional Development Master Plan.
Make a motion to accept the professional development master plan.
I'll second.
Discussion.
I have a question, Matt. Who is on the professional development committee?
There is,
I don't necessarily need names, just representatives.
yeah, there's 7 representatives.
Okay,
Yep, there's a paraprofessional as well as special education and then teachers, unified art teachers as well.
okay.
It's a good mix.
So a teacher from each discipline,
For
is
the,
that what you're saying?
for the most part, yeah.
So PMTA has representatives.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Ask people names.
Any other questions? Concerns? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Thank you. Looks like we have some policies here.
So the first one is regarding class size, with some of the other changes in related policy. I'm recommending some changes to the teaching load policy. You don't have anything in collective bargaining about class sizes, but you do have this policy. So I'm suggesting a change to the first line that sets a maximum teaching load for any teacher. It reads should, not must, so it's still a guideline, not a requirement. But I think acknowledging that phys ed classes are generally going to be larger, and specifying that load be set at 150 rather than 125 a day makes sense. And if you consider the kinds of written assessments that most teachers have to do that generally are less common in phys ed, it doesn't seem to create any undue burden. The second change I'm suggesting is a strike, and that's because those are collectively bargained details. So you've agreed to those with the teachers. If at any time you negotiated that differently, you'd have to come back and change the policy. You don't need both. Because it's collectively bargained, this limit exists, and it doesn't need to exist in policy. And then the third is simply consistent with the first one, with the exception of phys ed classes.
So you're saying that the maximum class would be 25 essentially?
So your existing maximum class size is 25.
It is?
It's a
Okay.
should, not a must, but that's the guideline. So for phys ed, it would be 30.
30.
And next year, tentatively, we've got one section of phys ed with 32 students, but all the others are smaller. So the total number of students in a day with 5 teaching periods is under 150.
I taught more than 32 when I was a phys ed teacher.
Oh, sorry, I'll make a motion first and then I'll give my,
Is this a first read, though?
yes.
Yep.
Still, it's a motion,
I
right?
just want to make sure these are first reads. Just didn't say it on there. Just make sure.
I move, policy IIB for first reading.
Second.
All discussion.
So on item number 3, it's just grammatical. You already have class size shall be limited to 30 pupils except for all of these different exceptions. Why not just throw physical education into all of the exceptions that are already there?
Sure.
It's just a,
Semantics.
yeah,
Yeah.
it seems,
Yeah, just add phys ed.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Any other
Got it.
discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, all in favor?
I,
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Graduation requirements.
The next two are related, IKF and IKFR. The -R refers to procedures that support a policy. And these changes are consistent with changes in your policies and state law over the last year. So civics has been renamed American government. Financial literacy, there's actually a class here called LOYO, Living on Your Own, that meets that requirement. That is a new state requirement that we have that class. The board eliminated the 30-hour community service requirement actually more than a year ago, but it's still been in the policy, so that should be struck. And then under alternative credit options, earlier this year you adopted this but I'm recommending specifying the attendance rate requirement here in the policy. And then if you go to the -R, the procedures, it just reflects all the same things.
I move, policy IKF, for first reading.
Second?
Do you wanna have both, you talked about both of them, didn't you? They're both the same, so you wanna do both of them at the same time, you can.
And IKFR dash R.
Yeah, dash Rs are usually, I mean, in my experience, we don't vote on dash Rs.
You don't have to.
Right.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. We are under personnel.
So I do have an addition to the personnel report. As you know from the beginning of my report, I'd like to nominate Dan Haggerty, a BCBA, to serve in that role as a shared employee of SAU 301, supervising the registered behavior technicians in all of our schools at a salary of $80,000.
I move we accept the resignations as presented. It's 2 teachers, a custodian, and a paraeducator.
Second?
Any discussion?
What are the teaching positions? Do we
So
know?
the first one is science. Tragically, it's our physics teacher. His wife's a college professor who received an appointment at the University of Alabama. So they're moving. The second one is special ed teacher, and I think we have a candidate in the pipeline.
Okay, great.
The para actually resigned this position to go work in one of our elementary schools.
To go work what?
In one of our elementary schools.
Oh.
Not yours.
So one of the
Is the special ed teacher going on to a different school?
Yes.
All right. Any other further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? No. Passes.
I move we accept or approve the hiring of John Larson as the part-time athletic director and Dan Haggerty as the BCBA.
Second.
Any questions, comments, concerns?
It's great.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Good.
Public left.
Public, although I have something on public input.
You have?
I have something on public input.
Oh, okay.
No, not that one. So, I guess one of the classes here at the school, they have, some of the students do a project, and part of the things they chose was to write a letter of some things that they would like to see maybe for the future. So I received 2 letters as school board chair. First one is from, Madeline Nethery, and the basic synopsis is, and I'll ask, maybe you can give this to the board, is asking as a possibility of taking a look at if doing a moment of silence on September 11th. It used to be done to elementary schools up to 7th grade. If for some reason it stopped at 8th grade, and it's not done up here. She wrote a whole thing about it. I mean, her dad is military, and there's a lot of military people here, and it's big for our country. But a moment of silence right now is not observed on September 11th. So I give this to you as I didn't think it was gonna be an issue, but I wanted to bring it forward. They did a really nice job. They got grades for this, and the letters are awesome, and if we can get them out. The other one was from Ella Smith. Ella's asking to possibility of the school to look at, and we'll get rid of the volunteer stuff, but making it mandatory that somewhere along your career, you either have to participate in a club, a sport, FBLA, including outside dance, anything extra, because what she's seen since she's been here, since we got rid of the doing the volunteer work stuff, is she feels in her eyes and other students that there has been not as much participation and feeling like the school has gone backwards a little bit of not working together and not feeling as part of one unified school. Just not gonna read it off for you if you can get this out to the board.
So she wants us to add that to a graduation requirement?
That's the graduation requirement, that somewhere along your career you do something, and again, she did outside dance or anything along those, something that was more than just going to class every single day, is what you kind of put it. And however you want to look at that, it could be just clubs inside of here and stuff like that. But I thought it was great. I think it's something that you guys should take a look at. Maybe we have a discussion about it.
Yeah.
But they did a really nice job writing the letters, whatever class they were in, and
I think it would be some interesting discussion points.
yes, I think once you read it, I think the first one, I think September 11th one is pretty easy, I would assume.
It's pretty
Second one is probably some more discussion on it, but I do think there's some merit to it of what she's saying and what she saw inside of here, which I don't think would be something that a focus group could be done with the students inside here. How do they feel about something like that, or us too? I just think
Well,
it's
there
great.
were clubs also available during the school day, so that's the other piece. I mean, transportation for some students is next to impossible. So if you're trying to get them here before school or after school, they may not have the transportation, but if you have something within the school structure that could be considered.
Well, the den packs and maybe some
Right,
of
why
maybe,
doesn't the pack time?
well, pack time, maybe some of them count, maybe some, I don't know. I mean, that's how, maybe that's what I'm
Right,
feeling,
so-
because it's already built in, you have to do it. So I think in her mind is doing something you don't have to do.
Yeah,
Sorry,
that
go.
just feels like forced family
Yeah.
Can we
fun.
share this with the interim principal as soon as we have somebody?
Yep, I think it's just worth a great conversation. They did a nice
Sure,
job.
I think
Yeah.
that would be a good conversation. I
Good
agree.
discussion points.
And I don't know what teacher that class is with, but whoever it is, they'll look at, great job. Kids did a great job writing it, so. No, there's no other public input. All right, future agenda items. Oh no, I'm not done yet, hold on. I'm not done with action items yet. We do have to go back to an action item. I apologize. So, we need to have a discussion about the schedule of what we're going to do for meetings, and we have a discussion of who wants to be on what committee. Chirp, 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 chirp.
I talked to Deb, we tried to find what open spots were available. We could not find the paper for me to join a committee. I did go on buildings and grounds for the other school that I'm on. So I did attempt to get on the committee, but we couldn't find where that paper was that we needed to see what was open.
I mean, my issue is, I don't wanna start these meetings at 7 o'clock at night.
Now we're talking about the schedule.
Yeah.
versus-
Which one do you want to talk about first, schedule or the?
Listen, the committees are, it's all dovetailed, right? As presented, it was all dovetailed because
Change
there were
different days.
there were Alton meetings, and then Prospect meetings, and then there were Barnstead meetings, and then Prospect meetings, and the other week was committees, is that correct?
Something like that.
It was the night before, so it was in the same week.
Right.
So how about for the sake of, because I can tell right now, we're not gonna get this done today. Is for August meeting,
I think so.
could you put back out the lists of what there are committees, put back out again what your schedule was, put this on as maybe one of our first things we, in the beginning meeting, while we still have energy and food in our system to actually maybe hammer this out? Would that make sense?
Yeah.
I think we should wait till August first.
Yeah, 'cause I-
to
And there
start
isn't
that-
a long-winded presentation?
Yeah. So if we do that first, where we still have some energy, maybe we can get it hammered out. Put it this way, we will have to get it hammered out, and as of, whether we stay with our old stuff or not, because I also need to get hammered out of
Well,
what
because
committee.
the other two boards have to decide too, the Alton board and Barnstead.
Well, I thought via email we decided on the committees, is that not correct?
I didn't hear back from everybody, so I think, just come to that room that day and with your ideas of what you wanna be on, we'll get that hammered out, that's the easier one to get hammered out, and then a good discussion of how you feel about the schedule. And I'll have Tim put it back on.
Schedule-wise, if we could just handle that at the two other meetings, Alton and Bart, we're all the same people, so if it's discussed at the Alton meetings and the Barnstead meetings, then theoretically, a consensus here is just a check mark, you know, it's not.
We have another meeting for
Yeah,
August.
Well, Eunice had a point at our last meeting, and I deferred her to this meeting, so,
Yeah.
for
I
discussion.
I just think that these meetings are so long, that it's such an extensive discussion that it might be, you know. And it involves all three sets of meetings. But I will say, I'm in favor of clustering everything well as ourselves, because we know if we're planning vacations and things like that, we've only got 1 week to deal with.
So I hate to have the two boards be discussing and then nowhere near the same page and come back here again and still discussing that we're nowhere near the same page, being two boards.
That's why we have a superintendent who's consistent between.
What about if August, if we had no committee meetings and we just had a meeting for schedule, period? Like, instead of having a meeting at 6:30, it's come at 6. And for the only thing that would be 4 would be to talk about our schedule. Would that,
At 6 o'clock
yeah, would that be better than,
in August,
Fair,
yeah,
in the summer?
that's
Yeah.
smart.
I was just checking. Mhm. That's fine.
I won't look at the computer on
So when are we doing that? August first, we're gonna,
August our next meeting.
okay.
Yeah, and there'll be no committee meetings.
Yeah, no committee meetings, that, the only thing that we do is so we can get that done.
Hammer it
Is-
out.
Do you need a
Hammer it out.
finance committee meeting? Are you gonna be okay with that one in August, or?
I'll just bring it to the full board, how's that?
Which we do in Alton anyway, we don't have finance committee.
Well, I don't
know, there could be other things, I don't know, honestly.
I think that's a great solution. I think that if we could all, at 6 o'clock while we're fresh, to hammer that out and make a schedule for the year, that would be great. I think there is some consensus, but there are definitely some concerns. And at the end of the meeting is a difficult time.
Yeah, we're not gonna get done right here. That's where my concern is, which is not gonna happen.
So Heidi, you can just bring the finance to us as a big group, because that's what we do in Alton anyway. So
Yeah,
save the finance committee some time.
sounds good.
Deal.
Deal? All right, that works for me. All right, so let's make that happen. Future agenda items and follow-ups. Looks like, strategic planning, RFP for facilitation services, athletic logos and athletic programming, strategic planning. Get back to me. Facilities use. We need to get back sooner than later. We can talk offline about that. Student teachers and policy procedures, student activities accounts.
That's done, we can take that one off.
That's done, off the list. Residency and tuition policies affected by RSA 194D. August. PE ELOs,
September.
that goes to September. Teacher evaluations,
Maybe
Forget
next
about it for now.
September.
take that off the list for now.
How about,
any-
curriculum committee? We had talked about forming a curriculum committee.
Curriculum committee needs to be added on to future items, okay, curriculum committee. Is there anything else that people would like on for future agenda items? Keep in mind, if you keep extending it, it's more work for you.
Field trips or something?
Me?
What did you wanna circle back at? maybe
Fields.
today? What?
Athletic.
Oh,
Athletic-
fields, oh, okay.
Athletic fields, so,
But I think that they sort of addressed that through some of the
Okay.
thoughts about buildings and grounds. And we have a new athletic director coming as well, so I think that that would be a good.
the, two things, one, there's some outside people that want to do some help. Two, we now have $15,000 to spend in those fields, and the new athletic director coming in. I do walk those fields, I am on them all the time, because I do coach a bunch of different sports around here, so there are things to be fixed, and it is not as expensive as, we can get it done with that $15,000, and then,
Is that next year's budget, or,
That's right now.
yeah, right now.
oh, so we need to do
Month
it by
left to
June
spend it.
30th, or should we encumber that money? or-
We can spend the budget for another 3.5 weeks.
Okay. I'm just
Would
worried
it,
about it.
oh, let me ask this, would it be easier to encumber it so we can use it over the summer?
You have to have what
You're supposed to encumber
The
against-
15, we still, there's $15,000 left in
You're supposed to encumber against a bid or a quote or
Yeah.
something. I don't even know what you're doing.
fields, fixing the fields.
But that's, is it sod, is it aerating, is it?
We fix the fields all the time.
Do some work to figure it out.
All right, we'll figure it out, but we have money to, if we get it going quickly, to get some of that stuff done.
Do we charge to use the, like, for outside
That's a whole-
organizations to use our fields?
But that's one of those.
Yes,
We do, or we will?
we have policy that says that we do.
Okay.
We're
It needs to
working
be-
on undercovering those layers.
That's worth, well, it's on the future agenda items, yeah, that's definitely worth a
That's why
long
it's there.
discussion.
Correct.
Oh,
There's some,
We have an inconsistently
That's what-
applied policy, it appears.
there needs to be some adjustments, and I think a new athletic director and some other stuff will be able to kind of get this hammered out. there is a policy, it's there. He's right, inconsistently used, but,
It's not just athletics, so the dance recital. and
correct.
Are we ready to go into non-public?
Sure, any other business?
that. I'm ready.
Nope, all right, non-public?
I move we go into non-public under